Okay. So does anybody have any questions to start off about sunchoke? Anybody grown? So sunchoke, Jerusalem artichoke. Anybody grown it before? Okay. Okay. Yes. Yes. So on the screen is a picture of it in growth, and that's the one thing we won't be able to see. Some of you, if you remember it, this summer, it's kind of everywhere. We have it up around our deck that goes out on the pond, and we have a big production area of it out front in that garden near the road. And we've been growing Jerusalem artichoke. The Latin name is Helianthus tuberosus, and we've been growing it for probably more than 10 years now. I will say that what we did this morning has needed to be done for probably 8 of those 10 years. So I will give you some information on how to grow. Jerusalem artichoke is a native here in our area. It actually will overwinter in zones 3 through 9. It is hardy. It's hardy in a lot of the United States. So it is a prairie plant. It will grow in full sun. It likes to be, it's out in the weather. Some of the things that we're going to talk about medicinally with it are because of its abilities to handle drought and freezing temperatures. It has adapted phytochemicals within its tubers that are why we use it for medicine. And I'm going to be telling you the medicinal aspects of Jerusalem artichoke today, but I want to kind of reiterate from the ethnobotanical standpoint, from using plants as medicine. Whenever you hear, if you start to look up sage or rosemary, and you're looking for all of the medicinal aspects of it, it reads like you can't believe it. It reads like it's too good to be true, right? Have you ever looked up something and it's like it cures everything? Yeah. And you feel like, well, it can't cure everything, but then the next plant that you read into, well, that cures everything too. And I think that this is part of why the mainstream health authorities, Western medical authorities struggle with the idea of using plants because, well, it seems like they cure everything. Unfortunately, the truth is they sort of can, and also they can't. So you have to understand each individual plant and the chemicals that are available inside the plant. But the way that these look like little statues of people. The way that the plant adapts to its environment, what it has had to adapt around, so drought or freezing temperatures or a deficiency in the soil of a certain nutrient or a pollutant or an insect that has moved into the area and is now causing stress on the population of that plant. Those are the reasons why we get medicine in plants. So this is why it distresses me greatly to see like the ash tree. The emerald ash borer moved into the area. You've got your native folks that get really stressed out. This is an introduced species, and they worry about invasive species of this and that kind, whether it's an insect or whether it's a plant. They get all strung up about, this is an invading species and we have to do something. And so what they've done in response with like the ash tree is they just cut them all down. Because if we kill all the ash trees before the emerald ash borer has a chance to kill them, then they won't have a chance to kill them and we will have won. The problem with that is, obviously there's a problem with that and it sounds cuckoo when you say it that way, but that is what they're doing. The problem is that in any given stand of plants that an invader goes through, there will be survivors. We see this with the American chestnut. We lost all of these gorgeous trees, but some of them still stood. And now we're going into those trees and gathering genetic information and trying to regenerate that tree because those trees survived an introduced blight. And so there's something different about them. They pulled up some different combination of nutrition, or there was something in the soil that was different there that those trees were able to access. At any rate, they withstood the test and they passed. And now we can go and collect from them so that we can make sure that that tree continues on the planet. With the way that we're going over the ash, they're just cutting it all down. And so we're not giving anything a chance to survive. And so we're not giving anything, we're not going to be able to go back in and select from the survivors that have gathered different phytochemicals. The phytochemicals, PHYTO chemicals, are the things that we use for medicine. And they're vitamins and minerals. And then they're also all of these different compounds that the plant makes to defend itself. So when we talk about a plant like this that has so much going for it and it can do so much for our bodies, the reason is not just because Jerusalem artichoke is a miracle worker. It's because Jerusalem artichoke has been designed to work in its environment in a unique way, and the chemicals that make it up and make the leaves the color that they are, and that make the flower the color that they are, and make it withstand a drought and freezing temperatures. All of that goes together to make a chemical list that, when put into our body, does a lot of things. So I'm going to tell you what Jerusalem artichoke does, like the laundry list, but then I want to dissect into the why. Yes, Jerusalem artichoke does a lot. Do we have turkey visitors?
Here, got another visitor.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
yes. We can't. They find us. One of the turkeys a few years back would stand next to Carson while he made pizzas in the pizza oven, and he was so proud, and he would help, and then he would get a little bit of cheese, which is also part of his. Yes, I really don't appreciate that, which is why it's supposed to be, protected from them, but no. When I list all of the things that this does, I want to go back through and say, but why? What are the compounds? There are some known compounds within plants that we can point to and say, well, that's why. That's why it can do that, because of X or Y chemical or X or Y vitamin. It helps us to think through using the other plants in our environment. And it also takes it from the mystical, magical, it does everything, to, oh, well, here's why. Does that make sense? Okay, so these plants like to grow out in the open. They spread by, you can see these. These are, it's almost like a strawberry will send out runners. And this is happening just under the soil. And then each one of these are developing little tubers. And if we had left that in the ground, this little bump would have become a much bigger tuber. And then what we wind up with is these knobbly little doodads. And they have they have eyes on them, just like potatoes. And they have a skin on them, a lot like ginger. These are going to attract a lot of pollinators to your area. And then I have to compete with Chook Chook. And she's loud. I think that's probably one of the females. They spread. So when people plant Jerusalem artichokes or they send them home with you to plant, often they warn you, oh, be careful. Put them in a pot or put them in an area where you don't care, because they're going to run. It's like horseradish. Once you have horseradish or rhubarb, and a Jerusalem artichoke's the same. Once you have them, you're always going to have them. There's almost no way for you to go through the soil and dig every last little piece. And if any piece is left behind, it's going to grow into a Jerusalem artichoke next year. And so this is where it's not invasive. It's not listed as invasive, but people often kind of cry about it because they feel like it's invasive and it takes over, and it's really pretty. It's going to grow, you can get between 6 to 10 feet, and the bloom will be between 2 to 4 inches. It's really pretty. It's going to attract a lot of butterfly and bee and fly type pollinators to your garden. So it's a really useful thing to have, but it is smart to have it where it's going to run. So we have it in a space, we started with a row, and now it's a big swath through that front garden. We planted it. I planted it. This is also a me thing that I often include Carson in, but it was me. I wanted to do Jerusalem artichokes, so I got them in the fall, and I didn't want to store them, so I just kind of shoved them in the ground over to keep them over off the driveway, where it's just off where the deck is now, and they sort of just took over there. I meant to dig them up and plant them where we wanted them, but that's really where they, and so we've moved them. We've moved them, I don't know how many times now. They're still there, very plentiful. And then you'll also find them showing up strangely in other places of your yard that you don't recall moving any dirt to or planting them in. We have a big chunk of them out in the orchard. We've got them along the back of the lean-to and the side yard. I don't know how they got there. There's absolutely no logical way for them to have gotten there, but they did. They will reseed themselves, and so maybe that's how it happened. You're going to plant them in spring. It takes about 110 to 150 days for them to mature, so this is going to be a long run. You want to get them in early, and they're going to grow up. And then you can dig them. These are very small knobs, and if you were to order from Asia and get Sunchokes or Jerusalem artichoke, I don't know which they call them there, you're going to get much bigger knobs of these rhizomes. So they'll look more like a great big ginger hand or something. Ours are very small because we haven't dug them. If you don't dig them up, I mean, most people are digging them up because they get frustrated with them taking over an area, and so every year they dig them all up, and then they laugh at you in the spring and they pop back up, but they're more sparse. The more you dig them and thin them out, the bigger your roots are going to be. So it's one of those plants that you're meant to have a relationship with. If you have your relationship with it, it will mind its manners and it will stay under control and it will give you big roots. If you do not have relationship with it, it will run amok, take over your farm, and when you want to have dinner for, say, a dozen people that are coming to learn about Jerusalem artichoke for the afternoon, when you go to dig them, they're going to be tiny little things, and it's going to take you 3 hours to make soup because you're going to have to clean every single one of them and get them out of the ground, and your daughter will be very annoyed with you and not get any scones made. So we knew that that we had this class because we knew that we needed to dig that this year, and it was a great when you have a farm and you've got a lot of these things kind of sitting around, you almost kind of have to make an event that pushes you to do the chore that you need to do. So we knew we needed to dig all the Jerusalem artichoke this year, get them up out of the ground, and there's a lot more out there, even though they're small. There's a lot more out there, and we're going to dig and have available for folks to be able to buy seed stock. Okay, so let's go into food, the nutritional aspect of them. I don't think there's anything else I want to say. Spacing is 12 to 18 inches apart. You can cut them like a potato. So I don't know why, because you're going to have so many of these that you need to start with smaller. But if I wanted to, I have 3 eyes that are very obvious on this plant or on this tuber, and I could cut it so that there's at least 1 eye in each hole. So it's very like a potato. Let's go into the nutrition of these. These are very good sources of iron, and that's one of their top benefits. They're high in iron, copper, magnesium, phosphorus, and potassium. They also contain vitamin C. They have some different of the B complex, but specifically B1, which is thiamine. They do contain calcium, and then I think that's everything. There are some mention in the literature about zinc and a little bit about manganese as well, but I would say they're probably pretty trace. So you're looking at the copper and the iron. Potassium is it's really good for potassium. The most studied compounds in here are inulin and I'll get this right for you, heliangine. It's HELIANGINE. And so when we get to the medicinal, we're going to be talking about what are primary chemicals in a plant and secondary chemicals in a plant. The primary chemicals are what we always talk about. That has vitamin C and calcium and magnesium, and broccoli's going to be great for calcium. We're talking about the primary chemicals in a plant when we are talking about the vitamins and the minerals, and they are medicinal too. We should think beyond just, oh, it's nutritious. Nutrition is medicine, and so we can treat ourselves with those plants that have the high amounts of those primary chemicals. The secondary chemicals are in this plant that we're talking about are inulin and heliangine. And you can say it however you want. That's how I'm saying it today, is heliangine. When we go to eat this is just like a potato. And so, in fact, the soup that we made today is very like a potato soup. Lots of your aromatics and then potatoes. You do not need to peel these. I suppose you could, but it's the same way with ginger. It's really fiddly. Probably it would be easy to do it like you do ginger with a spoon instead of a peeler, because if you go after this with a peeler, you're going to have nothing left. So this can be boiled. You can mash them. I have these up here so that you guys can taste. I will slice them up if you want to taste. You can eat them raw. There's no reason I'm going to talk a little bit why you might not want to eat this at all, but if you don't have an issue with inulin, raw there's no anti-nutrient like we talk about with a lot of plants where there's and I'm going to blank on everything that I want to talk about. What's on grain? You guys should, this is where you can help me be my second brain. What's the anti-nutrient on wheat? That's not necessarily an anti-nutrient. It is a problematic nutrient that's inside. That's a protein. Wow, blanking on the acids that are on the outside of seeds. So I guess that's just not what I'm going to say today.
Is that what they usually call the seed coat?
Mm-hmm. It's in the seed coat, and
It's right here.
Yep. It's right here too. I say it a million times a week, and it's not going to be here. So we'll come up with it in a little bit. There are no anti-nutrients in Jerusalem artichoke, so you can get this out, and you can cut it up raw onto your salad, and it tastes a little like a watercress. So you can sort of get that natural watercress. There's a lot of little things out here in our natural habitat that we can substitute the tropical watercress for. We can use the insides of cattails for the same sort of crisp thing, but we can also saute them. We can roast them. So if you're making roast vegetables, you can add those in, and we can mash them and just use them like a potato. Why would we do that? It is readily available. It's something that we're growing, that we don't have to do anything. Like, you don't have to do anything. They don't need fertilized. You don't need to haul water to them. You just need to give them a space and let them go. And I love things like that because it's a lot less work. But meanwhile, since it's a native, you're also contributing to the pollinators. So you've got a food source that's readily renewable without you doing a lot of work that's contributing to you growing the other food. So why not? But the things that you might eat this for, and it's a long list, so I'm going to read. They are well known for prebiotic fiber. That's their big thing. Inulin is a prebiotic fiber, and we've heard about this since Poppy and Olipop have come onto the market. This idea of prebiotics. It's not probiotics. Probiotics are the good bugs, the good colonies that are in your gut. We need a healthy gut bacteria colony. We want them to be vibrant and varied. Prebiotics feed them. Prebiotics are things that we cannot digest. It's not food for us. It's food for them. So there are many things that are like that in the plant world. And obviously there's a design there. Obviously we're intended to be eating the vegetables, and there's parts of it that aren't for us. They do nothing, like they aren't food for us. They are benefiting our bacteria. They're feeding our bacteria. So those are the prebiotics. Inulin is one that has become really popular because the FDA has allowed this to be, it's on the GRAS or GRAS list. It is generally regarded as safe, and therefore it is in a lot of food. If you get even something that's healthy, so we're talking about all the way across the board, organic, mainstream, you might be eating inulin that comes from Jerusalem artichoke. You might be eating inulin in a lot of those prepared foods, and it is under the added dietary fiber name. Inulin is going to be slipped in there. So inulin is one of those things that you're going to see a lot of. And inulin scrubs the intestines. It increases specifically the bifidobacteria. And here is where we can start to pick apart, okay, bifidobacteria is going to be a heading of what can we go down the rabbit hole and see what increasing bifidobacteria does for us. And everything that falls underneath that, one of which is boosting and toning and supporting your immune system. Everything now that falls under bifidobacteria, we can claim as a use in the body, a health use in the body for Jerusalem artichoke. Because Jerusalem artichoke feeds and encourages that colony, and we're studying that, and there's a lot of history or a lot of research. So sometimes when we study a plant, we can go off, instead of just saying I want at Google return to me all of the medicinal studies on Jerusalem artichoke. You might only get a handful. But if you put in, I want medicinal studies on bifidobacterium, you're going to get a lot. And you can take that and look at Jerusalem artichoke. Does that make sense? So it starts to expand your ability to apply a plant to a health issue, because you understand that that plant can help you culture those bacteria. So we know that bifidobacteria helps regulate the bowels. In fact, this plant will help regulate your bowels for sure, sometimes to the negative, which we'll talk about. And we know that this inulin is also helping us to remove cholesterol, and also helping us to detoxify our liver. So it's helping to purify our liver by pulling toxicity out of the walls of our digestive tract. So it's a scrubber. So the things that I absolutely have studies that can support balances blood sugar. So eating this, the inulin in it, because it's a prebiotic fiber, inulin can help balance your blood sugar. So this is something that it is a sugar. It is somewhat of a sweet flavor. It is a saccharide. It's a polysaccharide. But it is not a sugar that spikes insulin. So a lot of diabetics, well, maybe not a lot, diabetics in the know grow Jerusalem artichokes, and then they'll replace potatoes, which I know my mom is one. She's a type 2 diabetic that she's always managing her blood sugar, and if she goes and has a meal that's got a bunch of potatoes in it, she knows her blood sugar is going to spike the next day and she'll have to balance everything out. This is a potato that you can use so that you don't have those spikes. And while you're doing that, it's also helping to manage your metabolism. And so it's supporting your body's regulatory spaces so that you're healing from diabetes, which is an odd notion, I know, because that's not what's possible, but it is. So we know that it reduces cholesterol, and that's a side effect of the inulin content. It has cancer protective factors, and specifically we've seen studies on breast cancer reduction with Jerusalem artichoke and the compounds that are within it. We've seen it reduce triglycerides. So other studies that we've seen with this, it can lower uric acid levels. That's your gout. It can detoxify out heavy metals, alcohols, and radionuclides. So this is interesting to me right now. Jerusalem artichoke is in the sunflower family. It's not too big of a leap to understand. Does anybody know what sunflowers are being used for around the world? Human disasters. They plant sunflower around where we have nuclear reactor leaks and explosions, because it can pull those nuclear components up out of the soil and return the soil to being able to be used and return the environment. So this is in the sunflower family, and it's capable of doing that. So it's able to pull it out of the body. Something to keep in mind, though, because it's capable of pulling radioactivity out of the soil. So being aware of what's going on in your soil and what you're eating. Because what it can do in the soil, it can do in your body, but what it can do in the soil may or may not. Some plants will pull toxic compounds out of the soil and then metabolize them, and then it's not something that we're eating. Some plants don't fully metabolize what they pull out of the soil, and so like you may eat a vegetable that's very high in lead because it's very good at pulling lead out of the soil, and you planted it where an old house was sited in the inner city. We see a lot of that there. That's why they do raised beds. It's antifungal. It's been used a lot in weight loss because it's working on that metabolism. It's an immunostimulant. It prevents acne, protects gastritis, mucosa. So I said it's a scrubber, which sounds like, oh, that's like harsh on the inside of my digestive tract. It actually is known to protect the mucosa of the inside of our digestive tract. Cytotoxic properties in breast cancer. It prevents constipation, supports in cardiovascular disease, because I'll pull out again, it's high in potassium. So we see a lot of studies that are being done with Jerusalem artichoke where it is helpful for heart health, circulatory health, because of its potassium content. So that ability of the plant can be applied to part of your cardiovascular health program. Chronic infectious disease, chronic fatigue, gut flora disorders, and immune system disorders. And of course, all of those things are happening because of the compounds that we know, and also the compounds that we don't know. Remember that we only know, I would say, healthy estimate, maybe 15 to 20%. I'm being really kind. Maybe we know 15 to 20% of what chemicals are in a given plant. Generally, I say 10%, but I'm being kind today. So that will leave 80%, let's say, that we don't know. We don't know. And that's because if we feed this through, and it burns everything down that is a chemical makeup of this plant. We feed it through a gas chromatograph, and it will show in the ash. It analyzes it, and the readout will look like an EKG. And every peak is a different chemical that it's identified in that ash. We humans, in our chemistry science, can only name and structure and get our arms around and describe, let's say, up to 20% of any given readout of any given plant on the planet. The rest of that is like, I don't know. So scientists who go into science looking to worship gray matter go, that stuff doesn't matter. We don't know it, so it's just waste. It's not active. The active parts of the plant are the things that we can identify and we can name. And those are the things that are happening. So I'm telling you about this plant. I'm telling you in the 20%, let's say. I'm telling you the things that we've gotten our arms around and we're studying. Then there's like all of this stuff over here that this plant is made up of. It's everything. It's the essence of this plant. It's how it came to be, but we don't know what it is. So there are other things in here that are happening that are synergistically working that we don't understand and we don't know and we can't name, but there would be blips on your gas chromatograph readout. Now, what I do want to share is, if anybody has heard of the FODMAP diet, there are diets for folks who get digestive issues, and often this goes on FODMAP, F-O-D. So F as in Frank, O, D dog, M-A-P, Paul, FODMAP. It is a diet that often eliminates the cleansers, the things that are part of foods that are well, they're often very good for most people, but there are some people that are sensitive to them. Inulin is one of these things that would be attempted to be eliminated on a FODMAP diet, but you might not realize all the things that inulin is in. And so there are some people who are actually allergic to inulin. And if you're allergic to inulin, you can get discomfort in your digestive tract, bloating, flatulence, diarrhea, stomach inflammation. And you can have a fructan intolerance, which inulin is a fructan, which is a polysaccharide. You can have, and fructans are the things that are avoided in the polysaccharide or in the FODMAP diet, but the inulin is going to be special. And I have seen folks that have unexplained digestive issues and they've tried everything. And I think this is worth exploring if you're one of those folks, because inulin allergy is really rare. We know it happens. The scientific community knows it happens, but because it's so rare, it's not something, if any of you have ever chased down a problem with a doctor, it's not a panel they're running. So they're not looking for really rare things often, unless you get somebody and it's your luck. Unfortunately, because inulin can be hiding in the dietary fiber part of a lot of your prepared foods, you can be constantly being activated in this way and not know why. You could be trying to keep food diaries and not know why. So I want to tell you some of the other plants that we know inulin is in. There are 36,000 species of plant that contain inulin. And some of the ones that you will run up against would be dandelion, burdock, chicory, garlic, agave, wheat bran, onion, bananas, asparagus, leeks, and barley. Inulin is really useful in commerce and in medicine. Inulin is part of what they use to test kidney function. So if you have a test of kidney function, they will use inulin to see your reactivity within your kidneys. On the positive side, inulin, for those of us who aren't allergic, inulin has so much for us. And so this plant is a useful plant to have in the diet. Traditional diets that we're starting to analyze, some of the traditional diets we've looked at have up to 20, I'll get this right, 20 grams a day of an inulin containing food, of inulin out of an inulin containing food. And there is one tribe in the Chihuahuan Desert that they found they had up to 135 grams of inulin in their diet a day. And if you think about what that's doing, it's ensuring that toxins are purging out of the body appropriately. It's making sure the bowels are running smoothly. There is cancer protective. It's going after cancerous enzymes in the digestive tract. It is increasing the bifidobacteria, so you have a really healthy gut flora. And there's a lot of good things to recommend this. So if you want to isolate inulin, how many of you have ever done like a dandelion tincture and you find at the bottom it's got this creamy white residue that you didn't put in there? I have all of my long-term students come to me and freak out about this. Every year I have somebody that's like, is this moldy? Because they put in dandelion root and now they have this creamy white substance at the bottom, and that's inulin. It has isolated it. We can isolate out inulin with alcohol, 80 to 100 proof. You can isolate it out with vinegar. Vinegar is a good isolator. We do see inulin degrading at about 300, this is very specific, about 329 degrees Fahrenheit. So if you bake this at a very high level, like if you were to roast these roots in a 400-degree oven, likely you're going to degrade a good amount of the inulin. And that may be fine if you're sensitive. It's probably not enough if you're allergic. I wouldn't say that it gets rid of all of it. Raw is going to be difficult. We can keep all of the compounds of this plant if you ferment it. So if you slice it, you can slice this along with dandelion root and burdock root and make it into a really cool ferment that you just have a little bit every day. And that is really good. That would be a really good supplement to get all of the benefits without eating this all the time. They say that, 15 to 20 grams a day is what you need to get to where you're increasing your bowels moving. That is a side effect with this. Some people are sensitive to that, and so you want to start slow and don't make yourself a huge salad of it and sit down and think that your afternoon will be fun. It might not be. Today the soup has it in it, but you're not eating a ton of it. So a couple things to tell you about. The big complaint that people will say about Jerusalem artichoke is the gassiness and the stomach discomfort that can cause. Do not eat Jerusalem artichoke until after frost, because the inulin in this will be high enough that it is very abrasive and very difficult on your digestion. Once it goes to frost, that the amount reduces. It starts to change over a little bit to starch. And now we made sure to have this class after. It was hard because the frost, I was beginning to wonder if we were ever going to really have the frost before this class, but we did. You want to have at least 1 or 2 frosts on it, and you want to give it maybe a week before you start digging it. This is a food and a medicine that you can keep in the ground all the way through winter if you'd like. You just have to keep the ground from freezing. You do not want to dig your Jerusalem artichoke, dig all of it, and then put it in storage in what you would do potatoes, because you're going to lose the benefits that are in it as it sits, it loses this inulin and it converts it. The benefit to those with diabetes is that plants that tend to be high in inulin like this don't store their energy in starch. Potatoes store their energy in starch. But dandelions, burdock root, Jerusalem artichoke, they don't store their energy for overwinter in starch. They store it in inulin. But as it sits out of the environment that it's growing in, it starts to convert over. And so you lose a lot of those benefits with it in storage. It's not worth really eating late in winter if you dig it. So you want to leave it in the ground, or you want to pull it up and either tincture it or dry it, and then you can make teas or powder it or add it to your food later on. You can do all of those things. Just don't go above 329, but usually we're drying 175, 190, something like that. So you're going to preserve it. Yeah.
Could you store it cool, like in sort of sand in like a loose cellar or something? Does that make it?
I think it's possible. I haven't read of anybody doing that, but the same way you would do a carrot or a beet or something like that, I would say probably, yeah, maybe I'll try that. I've got some carrots and beets in storage right now that we're playing with. They like 80 to 90% humidity, and they like a 32 to 40 degree temperature. So maybe you could keep this. We're keeping it in wet layers of wet sawdust. And so it would be like it was under the ground. You could try that. I'm going to pickle a bunch of it, ferment a bunch. I'll test that out and see what I think. I mean, you don't have a laboratory at home, but I think if you watched the texture of it, as it converts to a starch, the texture is going to change. And so as long as you're not seeing a texture change, likely it's fine. It's not going to become toxic, so it's not like it's going to hurt you to do it. You just won't get the same medicinal benefit. But do dig it after the frost. Make sure that happens, and you will have less issue. The other thing is they recommend sometimes you can cook it in lemon juice, and that will also reduce, that acid will reduce the flatulence causing. Yes.
If it's good to keep in the ground until the first frost, would it also be beneficial if you would dig it and then freeze it? Would that help to get rid of?
I don't see why not. By that point, the stalk should be dead, so it's not like the plant is going to know the difference between being frozen in the freezer or being frozen in the ground. So possibly. Yeah, I think that's another thing to ponder scientifically. That's the beauty of working with plants like this, is you can be scientific and you can try different ways. And if everybody gets really farty, then you know that didn't work. And you don't do it that way. But I think it's definitely worth understanding, are you sensitive to fructans? And I have run up against people that list of foods, if you are sensitive to, if you eat one of those and it hurts your stomach or you see digestive issues, this is definitely a good talk to come to and kind of clue in like, oh, maybe I have an issue with fructans, or maybe even I'm that rare person who's allergic to inulin. And if you are, I've never really seen it discussed, this idea of an inulin allergy. And because it doesn't actually contain a sugar, it has low calories, it doesn't spike your insulin, and it's a fiber. The fact that the FDA has allowed it into the food supply, everybody's using it. because I can put it into my food and I don't have to claim, like, it's a little bit sweet, but I don't have to claim sugar, and everybody hates sugar. So I guarantee you've got inulin in almost every packaged food that's out there, and it's underneath dietary fiber, and you'll see it on the package. And so if you're somebody who's sensitive to inulin, likely you're getting lit up constantly and not, you look at the package, oh, well, I have problems with onions and I don't see any onions in that list, so I'm good. But it says dietary fiber. And there you go. And then you're confused because you've eliminated onions from your diet, and you're smart and you're journaling on your food, but you keep eating stuff and you have the same issue. And so then you get confused in your health. So it's something to keep in mind, knowing that this compound is a plant strategy, and it is largely in our food, and it has a great benefit for most people. But if you're struggling with anything that's sort of that, like, what's going on? Why is this happening to me? It just might be something to take a look at. Yeah.
I'm confused. I have an app on my phone from the Monash University in Australia
Okay.
that has done the internationally huge study on FODMAPs and all that. And when I look up raw artichoke, it says it's high in fructose.
Raw artichoke or raw Jerusalem? Jerusalem artichoke. Okay.
So, did I understand you to just say it didn't have?
It is a polysaccharide. I think
I thought they said that it was a monosaccharide.
fructans are polysaccharides.
Well, it listed that it had both fructan and fructose in it.
I'll have to look back at that.
Okay, I was asking because I wanted to make sure I didn't misunderstand something.
Fructans are polysaccharides, and inulin is one of them. Fructans aren't only inulin. Inulin is a fructan, and fructans are a group of polysaccharides. So they do have a sweetness to them. I vaguely remember reading fructose in conjunction with Jerusalem artichoke, so it's possible that, yeah, it also has fructose.
So,
but
would that be
inulin is going to be separate. The body's going to handle inulin different.
Negativity for those that are diabetics then?
There's fructose in honey, too. It just depends on what it's bound to.
Okay.
So that's a whole other afternoon to talk about sugar. But fructose isn't necessarily bad. It's whether it's bound or not. So high fructose, where we've taken it away from the food and any nutrition and amplified it, becomes something that absolutely will raise your glycemic index. For instance, this has a glycemic index of 50. So it's considered a medium range in the glycemic index. It's a medium. Where was I going with that? I had a very, very straight path that I wandered off of somehow. Crap. Shoot. I don't even know what I started to say. Oh, sugar. Yes. It's unbound. It's unbound sugar that's the problem. It's when it gets unbound from nutrition that we have an issue. So if this is spun out and we isolate the compounds away from the Jerusalem artichoke, there's a different interaction with the body than if I just eat this Jerusalem artichoke. That goes back to like that whole picture of all the chemicals that are there. When it's all bound in together, it's balancing and controlling one another. Same with honey. Honey is a bound fructose. Agave is not. Agave has very high fructose. It's a high fructose, very high glycemic index. Low glycemic index. Now I'm going to have to look at my notes before I try to have this talk. The point is you cannot have unbound sugars. That's going to cause the problem.
So basically you're saying
I'm going to stop this because I'm on the low battery.